Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers from Manhattan at the Kansas Livestock Association annual meeting. We're going to talk with this guy. Actually, he's my neighbor, Phillip Weltmer, who is outgoing president now of the KLA. We'll visit with him just shortly. We'll also have updates from Kansas Corn, Kansas Wheat, and the Kansas Farm Bureau, our weekly update from our friends here at KLA, as well as market information from Pinion. Stick with us.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
And welcome back at the KLA meeting in Manhattan, joined by Phillip Weltmer, Smith Center cattleman, finishing up his term as the president of KLA. Phillip, I think a year ago when we talked, you had a big, long agenda, and right before we went on the air, you checked it all off, and we got to also add, you brought us some good moisture.
The elections turned out, at least we feel like, favorable to the ag producers. So we're excited about the opportunity, and the optimism in the cattle industry is really high this week. With cattle prices high and the rain, I mean, you can't ask for much more. I mean, some excitement.
Let's reflect back on the year. You spent a lot of time in D.C. advocating. You spent a lot of time with producers. What was the story that you shared, and maybe some of the things you're going to take of your year being in top leadership?
I think the biggest thing I take back is, as much as our state is so different, the issues, a lot of them are the same across our state. It's great people. Our members are truly the backbone of our association. I can do as much as I can with the other leadership, with Troy that's coming in, but we're only as strong as our membership. And so every place we went, it was, getting to hear the stories and just listening to them and hearing their concern, but also being able to answer some of their questions and hopefully, help them get through their next step where they're going, and with their operation, just being encouragement, I guess, and thanking them for being members. I think that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And traveling the state and seeing people that I haven't seen before, and areas of the state that I really haven't gotten into much, and
Sure.
It's been an enjoyment.
You also, we're going to put you on that correct side of the ledger. Cattle prices were higher your year.
They was. I told them December 1st last year when I took over, the January feeder board was at 209, and I think yesterday it closed around 252. I'm like, can't ask for much better, right? So, but no, you and I both know I didn't have a lot to do with the market, but I think consumers did. The demand for our products there's that desire. Yeah, we have lower numbers, but they desire our product. Mm. And beef is that's that meal that brings families together. You're not going to go get some chicken breast to feed your neighbors that coming over to have a big party. You're going to go get a steak. Mm. It's something about having that steak and that fellowship and friendship, and I think our consumers still are really attached to it, and then we are serving an amazing product. Randy Block said today, we're running 82% choice. That's a high quality product, and so consistency. It's no matter where you get it, at Walmart or Hy-Vee or your local butcher shop you go into. Hopefully, the quality of that product is the same there as I have in my freezer, and that's my goal. Sure. I may eat one beef out of what I raise. The rest are going into National or Tyson or where you're going to see that in your grocery store, in your restaurant, and that product that my family's raising, I hope, is just as good as my friends and families down the road that are also members of our association and cattle raisers in the state of Kansas. So we are passionate about our product, and it's an exciting time.
Phillip Weltmer, Smith County producer and the outgoing president of the Kansas Livestock Association, joining us here. We'll take a break. Back with more coming up in a moment.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
Our special guest is Dr. Justin Smith, who is the Animal Health Commissioner for the state of Kansas. We have caught up with him at the Kansas Livestock Association annual meeting in Manhattan. Dr. Smith, you talked to the folks here, giving an update on traceability. We know that the feds are coming or have come down with some different deal when it comes to moving livestock.
That is correct. There was a new rule that was initiated on November 15th that went into effect. First thing I want to say is it doesn't affect any new animals. It's still the same rule, meaning that we have those animals that are 18 months in age and older, those animals that are dairy animals of all ages, or those that are exhibition or sporting animals that are crossing state lines must have a official ID in their ear to cross state lines. What is new is that ID now must have the capability of being read both visually and electronically. So it's the ID type that changed, not the kind of animals that need to be ID'd.
And this has come down from the federal. This was nothing that the state or you or somebody decided.
No, that is correct. This is a federal rule. A federal rule that came down in Kansas. Yeah, then all states are expected to implement it.
This has been a long time coming. But I think probably the biggest question is what's going to be the cost to me if I have to do this. I know there's been a lot of discussion over the last several years of if and when this came and then who was going to bear the cost.
Sure. So I think that's a tremendous discussion, and it's still happening out there. The thing I failed to mention is that one of the changes of the rules is that anything that has a tag today, that tag is grandfathered in. Okay. So we're not required to re-tag any of those animals out there. Again, if they're not moving across state lines, they're not required to have a tag in their ear. But those EID tags, those electronic ear tags, do have an increased cost over the old metal clip tags that we used to have. Today, USDA has been providing us free tags to each of the states based off of their cow numbers. We've worked really hard about getting them out into the producers' hands. Is there enough of them? No, probably not on the long term. How long that program's going to last, yet to be determined. So I do believe there's probably going to be some cost involved ultimately to the producer. But right now, the stopgap is that we have the ability to supply it through our accredited veterinarians. We're able to supply those tags for that purpose.
Are there other threats out there, though? Is this why this has happened all of a sudden, or does it just take that long to get things done?
I think it is. I mean, obviously, nobody expected H5N1 in dairy cattle. That was something that caught us off guard. So we're always concerned about those threats and about what those look like. FMD is always on our top of our list as far as that concern is going. And so as we continue our robustness in our trade and our ag products, our susceptibility is there. And so we know Kansas is susceptible, and so those threats are available. But so there's not necessarily new, it's just more about it does take that long to get the process through.
Dr. Justin Smith is the state animal commissioner, and we've been talking traceability and so on. So we're going to take a break and get an update with him on H5N1 here in the state of Kansas. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
Dr. Justin Smith, who is the Kansas Animal Health Commissioner, is joining us, and he was talking traceability to those at the Kansas Livestock Association meeting. Let's get an update on H5N1. It's still, we haven't heard a lot, so kind of where are we at?
Sure. So first of all, it's still there. But I'm happy to report that there's no indications that we have Kansas dairies that are being subjected to it, that are suffering from it at this point in time. Something we're keeping our eyes on. There still is a federal mandate requiring cows, that are lactating cows moving across state lines must have a test. And so, we have a fair number of those cows getting tested today. Nationally, it still is impactful. California is really under the gun right now. They're really getting impacted with this and have for the last 2 to 3 weeks. The density that their dairies are at in coordination with each other and the way they share things is just allowed it to explode out there that they're going through right now.
Do you think we'll have this kind of a situation still nationwide for the foreseeable future because of such that hot spot and those numbers of California and the impact that has?
So I think, I will be first to admit there's a tremendous amount of this virus we don't know yet, and we don't understand yet from the dairy cow perspective. So there's a lot we don't. We also know that we are putting new heifers into a herd all the time, and so we know that there's a certain level of naive animals out there. So we always feel like we probably have animals that are susceptible to it. We do feel like there's a level of immunity that is conveyed when these animals do become positive, but how long term that lasts and what that is. So from a scientific component there's nothing to give us any indication that we won't see this kind of be a cyclic nature as we continue to go through the dairy process. So, but with that being said, why haven't we had it in Kansas again since last March? So, there's things we don't understand yet.
Right, and you've been working with the industry, I know, and because we have there's a lot of the dairies in southwest Kansas that's close to the state lines as well, and there's some hot spots around us, and so really what hats off to the industry who really got on early with you all working in partnership.
Oh, most definitely. I can't say enough how much our industry was engaged and how they took us on, and we know that there's practices out there now that can help eliminate the risk or at least mitigate some of the risk, and that is the biosecurity component of it, and know that they're what their workers are doing and how feed trucks are moving and milk trucks are moving within their herd, and so they've implemented those processes and it's been successful.
Before we let you go, anything else we need to know about from consumers or producers in dealing with all the myriad of things that you deal with?
So I think the big thing is, and I'm going to go back to the H5N1 thing, is that it is the same virus that causes highly pathogenic avian influenza in our poultry world. We're seeing the migration start now. We're doing migration surveillance on those birds, and we're seeing positive HPAI birds coming into the state from those wild bird migratory systems. So again, we can't let our guard down. We've got to maintain that biosecurity component separation. The other thing I would say about H5N1 is that we know that it's not a food safety issue. That meat that comes from those cows, as long as it's prepared properly, that milk that comes from those cows is, when it's processed, is not a food safety issue.
Very good. All right, Dr. Smith, as always, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
Appreciate
it very much.
Dr. Justin Smith, who is the state animal commissioner, health commissioner, dealing with all these situations, has been our special guest. We'll take a break, have more coming up in just a moment.
Hi, my name is Juniper and I'm a third grader. In one of Farmer Bill's videos, he said field corn instead of dent corn. Are they the same thing or are they different?
Hi, Jennifer. I'm impressed that you noticed that I called that field corn in the video, and that's a great question too. Is field corn and dent corn the same thing? Well, the simple answer is yes. They are the same thing. You probably didn't know this, but my real name is William. But my nickname is Bill, and over time, most people have just started calling me Bill. Well, we've kind of done the same thing with dent corn and field corn. The real name, to be exact, is dent corn, but over time we started calling it field corn. Now just about everybody that lives around here calls it field corn, which is kind of confusing because the other kinds of corn can be grown in a field too. Sweet corn and flint corn and popcorn can be grown in a field, but because this has dents in the top of it, well, this one's dent corn, and that's the one we raise most commonly out in the field. So we started calling it field corn as a nickname.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
We're here in a field in McPherson County, and today we're going to give you an overview of how to do in-field measures for the wheat quality tour in terms of yield estimates. So first thing that we're going to do, as you can see, we are about 120 yards from the border of the field. So whenever we stop at a given field, we want to make sure that we walk in past, because the border of the field is always going to be a little bit more stressed and perhaps a little bit different than the rest of the field. That's where there's the trucks are turning around and many other things ongoing, right? So we want to make sure that we walk into the field at least 100 plus feet or yards so that we're out of the turnway. Once we're in the field as we are here, we can identify we have two different formulas, either the headed formula or the non-headed formula. In this case here, we're looking at the crop. All the heads seem to be out already, so we will use the headed formula. Once we walk in the field and you get past the first 100, 150 yards or so, first thing that we will do, our yardstick, we're going to randomly throw it away. Wherever it lands is where we want to go and make our sampling, right? So we'll walk all the way into the yard, make sure you don't lose it. And first thing that we do is we collect the plant height. So put the yard all the way until the bottom of the canopy, and you see here in this case until the top of the head, we are 29 inches and a half. Use your yardstick to write it on, so you can put there field number 1, for example, 29.5 is the height that you got. Second thing, we need to measure row spacing. The way we do row spacing, we get 3 consecutive rows and we measure from the center of the first one to the center of the third one, so that gives us 2 spacings. In this case, we go from 0 to 15 for 2 rows. That means 7.5. So that's the second number that I will write down right here, 7. We need to estimate also what crop growth stage this field is. And if we look here, of course, all heads are out. We can briefly take a look inside and see what growth stage the crop is. It seems like all the florets are still very nice and green, so we give this field here heading, right? So this field is just headed out now. Even some of the heads are not fully out yet. There still might be a few of them that are just now coming out of the boot, but so that we're going to give the growth stage here of heading. Look at the staging of the crop. We have heads that are just coming out and heads that are already out there. And so this crop is at the heading stages of growth. You can actually look inside here and see how close we are for any grain developing, but we're still far away. So these will be the heading stages of growth. So when we are staging the field, different tillers are going to be at different growth stages. Here, for example, from the very same field, we have one tiller that is at the boot stage, meaning that the heads is still entirely inside the stem. It's being pushed up, so very soon it's going to be going through heading, where we call here, it's just the beginning of heading. You can see the heading starts to pop up there, those awns, or we call these awns or beards of the wheat head already out, and the head coming out of the boot. And then finally, the majority of the plants in this field are already at heading stage, which means that they are entirely out like this, at least partially to entirely, right? So again, while it's normal that we will find many different stages within the same field, we stage the field based on the predominant stage, which again, looking at this and taking a deeper look at each sampling that we've done, it is at the heading stages of growth. So just a difference here between a crop at the boot stage versus going through the beginning of heading versus completely headed out. So we have our height, we have our growth stage, where we're going to write down here in terms of heading, and we have our row spacing. So now, the next number that we'll need is how many heads are there in a row foot. So for that, this area where we are going to sample, you're going to go down into the canopy and 12 inches, right? You put the ruler, you put this yardstick in the bottom, and you're going to select and create a bunch of plants like these from 0 to 12. So in 12 inches, how many heads are there, right? So we have these heads out here, and now we're going to count all of them in those 12 feet. It's very important to put the yardstick in the floor and not on the top here, because that can give you different counts. So in 12 inches of row here, we had 31 heads. That's the next number that I will write down here, 31 heads. And then out of this very same sampling spot, you're going to catch a couple or 3 random heads, and we're going to count how many spikelets we have in a head. Now, you're going to notice that the very bottom spikelets, many times they are not going to fill a grain, so we don't count those. And also many times, especially in a year like this year when there's some freeze damage out there, we're also not going to have some grains developing in the top, so you need to be very careful with that. But in this case, it seems like in the bottom 3 spikelets here, there will be no grain forming. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 that will probably produce some grain.
Our farmers and ranchers in western Kansas, in the Midwest total, with the long drought, I don't know how they would have made it without the Farm Bill. We're talking about 4 or 5 years of catastrophic crop losses and crop insurance and aid through the Farm Bill were many times the only ways some of these family farms made it through. Farming's a risky business because of the weather, because of all the unknowns. It provides for some stability within our community, and this just allows us a little bit of security to know that we can pay our bills in the end. We raise cattle, sheep, and then we grow corn, soybeans, and hay. We incorporate all 3 on all of our farm ground. We plant cover crops, we graze crop residue. We have livestock pretty much year-round on some piece of farm ground. We've partnered with the Natural Resource and Conservation Service to put in some buffer strips along creek banks that protect our watersheds. We've also started planting cover crops and used technical assistance from them in planting those cover crops. We also have quite extensively used the EQIP program to remove invasive species from our native range. So EQIP has partnered with us to control and to bring some of our pastures back. In our crop ground, they've helped us with technical advice when it comes to cover crops and no-till and things that we can do to save some of our soil. Well, I think second to our national security is food security, and the knowledge that we have a safe, abundant food supply in our grocery stores at all time. I think that benefits all of us to not worry about where our food's going to come from. We got a little taste of that during COVID. I think that drove home the message of why the Farm Bill is so critical, not only to farmers and ranchers, but also to consumers.
The 2025 inductees into the Cattle Feeders Hall of Fame are Joe Morgan of Scott City and Dan May from Stratton, Colorado. The two will be honored during the group's 16th annual banquet, February 5th, as part of the Cattle Industry Convention in San Antonio, Texas. Morgan is the Chief Executive Officer of Pokey Feeders. He began as a manager in 1985 and grew the feed yard from its original capacity of 17,000 head to the current 103,000, of which 95% are customer cattle. Pokey also partners on leased feed yards in Kansas and Nebraska and has extensive ranch holdings. Morgan is a longtime member of KLA and NCBA, serving on several committees over the years. He is a founding member of U.S. Premium Beef and has served on the board of directors since 2007, currently holding the position of vice chair. Others being honored during the banquet include Tom Jensen of Nebraska, who will receive the Industry Leadership Award for his commitment to agriculture during his 35-year tenure at the First National Bank of Omaha. George Luttrell Jr. with Midwest Feeders in Ingalls will be recognized with the Arturo Armendariz Distinguished Service Award. The Cattle Feeders Hall of Fame was established in 2009 to honor the exceptional visionary men and women who have made lasting contributions to the cattle feeding industry. Banquet tickets are $200 per person in addition to convention registration. All proceeds from ticket sales benefit future Hall of Fame initiatives. To register for the Cattle Industry Convention and purchase tickets to the Cattle Feeders Hall of Fame banquet, go to convention.ncba.org.
Hello and welcome. Tanner Burning with Pinion Risk Management giving you a commodity market update for the week of November 25th, 2024. I hope your holiday was spent with family and friends and you enjoyed some of the season's greatest feasts and my personal favorite time of the year. Not usually do we see a shortened holiday trade week run into December futures contract first notice date, but here we are in 2024. Positions will be rolling into the March contract from the harvest front month contract by Friday, likely putting selling pressure on as farmers price basis contracts or commercials roll over their futures into later months. Finding a bullish story in grains is about as hard as buttoning your top button after a third trip to the pie table, as we've seen liquidation from the temporary highs in corn, continued bottom dwelling in beans. Wheat is hanging around like the neighbor whose family left town on a trip without him, just trying to find its place and likely watching too much of the evening news. I'll state the topics that we should be watching over the next few months in what I believe is to be the most important to price direction. Number one is the weather in South America and the developing global oversupply as we roll big crop into big crop for the second year in a row. Number two is demand story 2.0 with the added twist of President Trump and his scheme to tariff other countries to create a more even trade deficit. Most importantly, the countries who are the biggest buyers of our ag commodities and products. Number three is inflation, supportive for commodities if rates do stay in this area, as we could very well see the inflation come back into the picture, meaning commodities will become a hedge as the large spec money. Couple that with the risk from number one or number two, and we could be back in a somewhat profitable type crop prices. Until number one, two, or three come into picture in any form or a combination of the three, we are risk off with large supplies or just adequate run-of-the-mill type demand. Nothing up front to add any premium to these prices, but three major stories that can keep us under pressure. Large supply environments create an opportunity for markets to inflict the most pain on the producer and try to make them reduce production as the market is in no need for it. I encourage producers, as always, to watch their bottom line and look at the fact that a smallest loser could in fact be 2025's biggest winner. When it comes to following the day-to-day moves in an ever-changing agricultural market, we at Pinion Risk Management look to be a trusted source of information for our clients, along with being a guiding hand on decision-making and reasoning towards a market plan. To learn more about our approach at risk management, please give us a call, 888-452-8751. I'm Tanner Burning with Pinion, and thank you for your time.
That'll do it for our program today. Thank you so much for joining us. Be social with us online at kansasagreport.net or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.